One of the most common things that people are usually nervous about when it comes to joining the Army is basic training. Am I going to pass basic training? Can I make it through basic training? Did I prepare enough for basic training? And in this video, I've got 5 things that I think that you should focus on. 5 things to prepare yourself for Army basic training. Now, I have done a video similar to this in the past, but I felt like maybe it needed a refresh, maybe a little bit of better insight to this. But these aren't necessarily just things physically. These are things just mentally you need to do as well. So a little bit of physical, a little bit of mental, just to prepare you and get you ready to hopefully succeed in Army basic training. First thing on my list, probably the most important one, cardio. Cardio is probably the most important thing, and I feel like that's why it's appropriately at the first one. The things that come after this are important, but probably not as important as cardio, because a lot of what you do in Army basic training is cardio based. There are probably some of you out there that are like, oh man, I'm not worried about basic training. I can lift, X amount of pounds. I can bench press this. I can squat that. Cool, great, but you also need to have good cardio. And if you got good cardio and you can do that stuff, awesome. But a lot of what you're gonna do in basic training is gonna be cardio based. You're gonna be going for runs, you're gonna be going on road marches, you're gonna be getting smoked, which is doing a lot of physical activities. And if you don't have good cardio, you won't be able to keep up. Because sure, maybe you can do like a ton of push-ups, but the thing is that that's not all you'll do in basic training. That's part of one of the things you'll probably do most commonly, of getting smoked is doing some push-ups and, other things that are usually cardio-based. So you want to make sure you have that cardio, because that's usually what kind of wears you out first, right? It may not even be your arms getting tired from doing the push-ups. You're just finding that you're out of breath. You're exhausted and you're having a hard time kind of keeping up, even though maybe you've got the strength to keep going. You don't have that cardio. So before you're heading off to basic training, make sure you have good cardio. Maybe going for runs, maybe practicing road marching, because that's probably pretty important because you're going to do some road marching, but something to build up that cardio. Doing sprints is a great way to build up that cardio. Doing things like, hey, you set a goal, like you see a telephone pole, maybe you're running outdoors, right? You see a telephone pole, you're like, all right, I'm going to sprint to that telephone pole, and then I'm going to walk for about a minute, and then I'm going to sprint again, look for another objective, and sprint towards that objective. If you're doing it inside, then maybe you do it as a timed thing. You just sprint for a while, and then you kind of walk for a little bit and then sprint for a while. And then it helps build up your lung capacity, which also helps with your cardio as well. So you want to build up that good cardio so that way you can keep up in Army basic training. One last thing on the cardio thing, you may be curious as far as how do I know, do I have good cardio? One of the things that I like to recommend is go for a run, right? Let's say you're going to do a 2-mile run, right? Maybe map out an area that's going to be 2 miles. And do that, and do a good jogging, a good pace type of thing. And if you can do that entire 2-mile run without needing to stop to walk, to catch your breath, you can do it at a good medium, good pace for that 2 miles, probably got a good cardio. If you can't do 2 miles without needing to stop to catch your breath, to walk for a little bit, then you probably do not have good cardio. Now this video is sponsored by Carbonox and their all new Carbonox Blaze smartwatch. They come in 2 variations, the Type R and the Type S. I am currently wearing the Type R, which is great if you like more of a rounded kind of look to it, but if you're more of a square style person, then maybe check out the Type S. This is a great smartwatch for someone who is in the military or even someone who just has an active lifestyle that's worried about, breaking a normal smartwatch, because this is not your average smartwatch. This watch was designed to handle rugged environments, and the watch undergoes more than 30 abuse tests to guarantee its durability. I've even put it through a few of my own, and it holds up to the challenge. Tired of charging your smartwatch every day? Well, the Carbonox Blaze can last up to 10 days on a single charge. You can answer phone calls directly on the watch and even control your music. It's got over 70 sport modes to track your workouts, heart rate, blood pressure, and more. Doesn't matter if you got an iPhone or an Android because it's compatible with both. The 2 biggest things that I probably like about the Carbonox Blaze is that it's really rugged, it's really tough. I'm not worried about if I bang it into a wall, up against a brick, or up against some hard object that it's gonna break. It's probably gonna hold up to that. So that's great. And the battery life. I love that I can go an entire week or even longer without needing to charge my watch every single day or even every other day. So I can go the whole week at work or whatever on a single charge. So stop wasting time on overpriced smartwatches that are probably going to get broken anyways, and get yourself a Carbonox Blaze. Link in the description box down below. Check them out. Now, let's get back to the video. Number 2 is ditching some bad habits. And you may not even realize they're bad habits. Maybe you do realize they're bad habits, but nonetheless, there's certain things that are kind of considered bad habits, or at least habits, maybe not necessarily bad, I don't know, but habits that you can't do in Army basic training. So I'll give you some examples. Probably a given that most people know about, but maybe not everyone. Smoking, dipping, vaping, those kinds of things. You can't do that in Army basic training. So if those are things that you rely on right now, you have a habit of doing those things, you gotta start working on probably trying to ditch those things because you're not gonna be able to do it in basic training. If after basic training you wanna pick those habits back up, you're at your regular unit, you're on active duty, reserves, National Guard, whatever, sure, if you really wanted to, you can. But during the time frame while you're in basic training, you're not gonna be able to do that stuff. I always find it kind of crazy when I see people that go and let's say smoking, right? They quit smoking all through basic training, but as soon as they're done with basic training, they decide, I'm gonna go back to smoking. And it's I don't understand why, but hey, to each his own. The main thing though is you can't do that stuff in basic training. There's no designated smoking area and you take a smoke break, between training and stuff like that. You're just not gonna be allowed to do that stuff. Even vaping, even if it's an e-cigarette, you're not gonna be able to do that stuff. So if that's something you're really kind of dependent on right now, you might wanna kind of work it into your kind of routine of trying to ditch it for now, at least, I guess, because you're not gonna be able to do it in basic training. And you probably don't wanna be in a situation where you're in basic training and having to really struggle because you weren't well enough prepared to just all of a sudden, boom, quit smoking. Kind of along with that, may not be necessarily a bad habit, but can be, I guess, depending on how you look at it, but caffeine, right? If you love to drink soda, you love to drink energy drinks, I drink energy drinks all the time, but if that's something you rely on, that's not really something you're gonna have access to while you're in basic training. I mean, you will have soda in the DFAC, but sometimes the drill sergeants may have certain rules on that. I've heard from some soldiers currently where their drill sergeants didn't really care, right? You got whatever you wanted, and then other drill sergeants had a strict thing where until you've done your ACFT, your fitness test, you were only allowed to have water and juices and stuff like that. No soda, nothing with caffeine until you passed your fitness test. So you got to be prepared just in case you're in one of those situations where you have drill sergeants that are really strict and they won't let you have anything. But possibly you could end up in a situation where, sure, they let you have soda, but it's not going to be as easy access as it is when you're not in basic training. Because right now, right, you have a craving, you want to go get yourself a soda, a Coke, a Pop, I guess depending on where you're from, right, of how you want to call it. Maybe comment down below, what do you call it? I call it soda. But for certain people in different parts of the country and stuff like that, call it different things. But, you have a craving for one, you run down to the local convenience store, the grocery store, or whatever, and go grab yourself one. You can't do that in basic training. The only opportunities you're going to be able to have one, if the drill sergeants are even letting you, is when you go to chow, when you go to lunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever kind of a thing, you can get a glass with your meal. But again, it varies as far as what leadership allows you to do. Even I would say coffee. I've seen where drill sergeants are not really strict on coffee, but you gotta be pretty quick about it because typically when you're going in for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you gotta get in and get out. So you don't have a lot of time to sit there and make this great coffee with creamer and sugar and all that stuff. You may be a little limited. You may have to go just straight black coffee, and if you like that, cool, right? But you're kind of a little bit rushed type of thing, and you're probably gonna get that one cup. If you're one of those kind of people where you're like, oh man, I like to have a thermos of coffee and walk around throughout the day drinking that, you're not gonna be able to do that in basic training. And if you're someone who's I gotta at least have 2 cups of coffee, you may not have that opportunity. You may be able to get 1 cup of coffee in, and sometimes that kind of depends on the environment as well. So nonetheless, caffeine is also one of those ones that you got to kind of work into that schedule to kind of get into the routine of possibility of you not having it at all or not having it as much as you're used to. Working on your fitness, of course, is a given, right? You probably are aware, hey, I got to be in some good shape. But one of the ones specifically I'll tell you that is important to probably make sure you're good at that you can do is push-ups, because push-ups is probably the most common thing that you're going to have to do in basic training. It's a part of the physical fitness test. It's a part of just daily exercises that you'll do probably for physical fitness in the mornings, and the most common exercise you'll have to do when you're getting smoked. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's just, the drill sergeants are gonna smoke you, they're gonna work you out to, get you in shape, and there's gonna be times where they're gonna be yelling at everybody and they're gonna make everybody do push-ups, just like in the movies, just like in the TV shows for the most part, right? Push-ups is one of the most common things you'll probably do in basic training. And if you suck at doing push-ups, you can't do a push-up, and you're like, I gotta do them on my knees, right? That's the only way I can do push-ups. Not excusable, even if you're a female, I'm sorry. But men, women, doesn't matter. Do not do push-ups on your knees, all right? You're not gonna be doing that in basic training, all right? So you gotta be able to keep your back straight, go down, come back up, keeping your body straight and everything. If you're doing the T push-up like they have in the Army Combat Fitness Test now, you gotta go all the way down with your chest hitting the ground and then put your arms out to make a T shape and then bring yourself back to the push-up position and come back up, right? But most commonly when you're gonna smoke, it's just standard push-ups, but for like the ACFT, the fitness test, you have to do that T-style push-up. So definitely get used to both, right? Practicing doing push-ups, being able to do, I would say at least 20 or more, right? Push-ups is good, right? Within less than 2 minutes, by the way, right? In one sitting, without having to stop and go to your knees, be able to do, 20 push-ups in less than 2 minutes is probably a good kind of baseline. Making sure you're able to have good kind of form, keeping your back straight, not doing head bobs and stuff, and you're not slinking or not slinking, but like kind of doing the worm, right? You're keeping some kind of good kind of posture, and you're able to do so without having to collapse, go to your knees, none of that stuff. So 20 or more is probably a good kind of baseline, and then hopefully you can improve and do even better. I think the fitness test standard for T push-ups is like 10 at a minimum, but you always want to shoot for bigger than the minimum. We're now on the fourth thing that I recommend to get yourself ready for basic training, and that is kind of just understanding military etiquette. There's certain things that, terms and ways that, you do things in the Army and just military or Army related things that are good to know. For the most part, you'll probably learn this stuff in basic training, but it is helpful to maybe at least have a little bit of understanding when you're going into basic training. A couple of the things I'll mention that are probably good for you to kind of know and understand is, one, is a little bit of the rank structure, right? You might already learn like all of it, maybe from watching some of my videos or somebody else's videos, or maybe through your recruiter and through like the prep course and everything for the Army. But at a minimum, at least know the difference between, like an NCO and an officer. So who to salute, who you don't salute. Who am I gonna stand at parade rest for, which is, standing at a specific position that you'll learn as well. And who do I have to stand at attention for, right? Knowing who is an officer and who is a non-commissioned officer and maybe who is not, like a lower enlisted soldier, is probably still really important. There's gonna be a point in basic training where you're gonna learn some of this. You're gonna learn some of the rank structure. You're gonna learn that, hey, this person you call drill sergeant. This person you call sir or ma'am, right? You're gonna learn that stuff in basic training, but that may not come until day 2, day 3. In day 1, you come in contact with somebody, you don't want to make a situation out of that, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you come across someone that's an officer and you call them drill sergeant, or you come across a drill sergeant and you call them sir or ma'am, right? So understanding like, hey, this is a drill sergeant, that's a non-commissioned officer, maybe not a drill sergeant, probably going to be okay if you probably slip up and call that person drill sergeant. They may say something, but not that big of a deal. It's going to be probably a bigger deal if you just call someone sergeant when they are a drill sergeant. That's probably a little bit bigger. So knowing a few of those things, whether you have it memorized that, oh, that's a captain, that's a colonel, that's a first sergeant, that's a command sergeant major, not as big of a deal. It's important to learn that. You'll learn that in basic training, but at least prior to going to basic training, knowing that, hey, that's a non-commissioned officer, I call that person sergeant. Maybe at a certain level, you do have to know that, hey, I don't call that person sergeant anymore, I gotta call that person first sergeant or sergeant major, but that's probably important to know too. But knowing some of those basics. So at that point, you probably might as well just learn everything anyways. But nonetheless, at least, hey, no, that's an NCO, that's a non-commissioned officer, and that's an officer. That person I have to salute, those kinds of things. The other one with military etiquette is time, right? If it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're not going to call it 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You may do that with your buddies and everything, sure, but military time, that's 1300, right? Because you have the 24-hour system. And some people I've heard that are already used to that 24-hour system, maybe because of work, because of their parents or whatever that were military or whatever, right? But in the military, officially, we don't use 2 p.m. You got to be here at 2 p.m., right? Or someone says, hey, you got to be there at 5 o'clock. And you're like, is that a.m. or p.m.? Well, if they said 5, that's probably in the morning, because if they said 5 and they meant 5 p.m., then they should have said 1700. So getting used to military time, that 24-hour system is good, because there's going to be things like that, right? You're not going to have to really necessarily be too dependent in basic training as far as being like, oh, we got to be here at 1400, I better set an alarm for that. You're going to be pretty much, pretty corralled and pretty controlled and everything like that, but it's good to know that, hey, if they say that we're doing this at 1400, 1500, you kind of know what that means. Now, the fifth one that I've got here, the last one on the list, is waking up early. You're gonna wake up early a lot, and sometimes without getting a lot of sleep beforehand. So getting used to that is pretty important. If you're someone that that thinks that, oh, getting up early is getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning. No, that's not, I mean, that's kind of early, but not Army early. When you're thinking about terms of how early you're going to be getting up in the Army, that's not early. Probably think more along the lines of like 5 in the morning, right? Maybe 4 in some cases. It really depends. There's a lot of factors that are in there. I'm sure you're going to hear maybe even in the comments, maybe from other veterans where they're like, oh man, we woke up at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's going to vary across the board dramatically, right? It just depends on what's going on, what leadership is doing, what is going on that day. But at a minimum, at least try to adjust to probably waking up at 5 in the morning and try to do something productive, right? If you're trying to prepare for that before going off to basic training, don't just wake up at 5 in the morning and go sit there and watch the news and sip on some coffee or something like that. Do something, right? Get active. Maybe you're kind of working on some of those, cardio that I was talking about earlier, working on getting into shape or something like that, or just maintaining, your physical fitness. If you're already in good shape, right, then just making sure you maintain that. But getting up at 5 in the morning to go start working out or something. Because how much sleep you get in basic training is going to depend. I mean, there's times where maybe you'll go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, times where maybe you'll go to bed at midnight and then wake up 4 hours later, you only got 4 hours of sleep, right? There's probably some dramatic stories where some people will tell you, oh, I didn't get any sleep, right? We were doing 48 hours straight, and that's probably a little extreme kind of a thing, but there are some times where maybe it's only a few hours, or maybe just other things that are going on. It may be a thing where the drill sergeants had you guys go to bed at 11 o'clock at night and they weren't going to wake you up until 4 or 5 in the morning, but there was things going on in the night. Maybe soldiers being crazy, maybe you got stuck doing fire guard, which is a little 1 hour probably guard watch that you have to do, or other things that were kind of going on. Maybe the drill sergeants came in and messed with you a little bit over the night, right? Nonetheless, just get used to waking up early, right? If you are not a morning person, I'm not saying you have to love it and you have to try to adapt to loving getting up early, but at least get used to it. So that way it's not a big shock when you notice that you're always waking up before the sun does. Now, those were 5 that I recommend, right? There's probably a ton more, right? And especially you veterans out there that are already in the Army. You've already experienced basic training. Some veterans that are done with their Army career, maybe you only did 4 years, you did 20 years, whatever, and you experienced that. What are some things maybe outside of this, or maybe even some things you want to add on to some of the things I talked about that you would recommend to somebody, right? Somebody that is preparing for basic training. What are some things to do? Not all physical, maybe some of it's mental, maybe some of it's even with their finances, maybe some things to get in order before you take off to basic training, some things to enjoy. I want to hear about that down in the comment section down below. So if you got some advice to bestow upon some of these future soldiers out there, drop them down in the comment sections down below. If you are someone that is preparing for Army basic training, I would love to hear down in the comment section, what are you doing? What is something you are kind of focused on as far as a goal that you kind of makes it understand or make you feel like that you're ready for basic training, or what is something you're concerned with? Comment down below. I'll do my best to respond to some of my viewers, some of you can respond to comments and help some people out, but nonetheless, help out. Let's help each other, I guess. Comment down below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and hopefully you enjoy the content that I create here on YouTube. If so, hopefully you're subscribed. Hopefully maybe sometimes you're sharing the video. If you'd like to support the channel to help the cause of what I'm doing, there's multiple ways you can do so. I've got merch, link in the description box down below, or you can visit my website to go and check out some of the merch that I've got. You can support the channel that way. You can even do just the free way, making sure you're subscribed, making sure you're leaving some comments. That's totally free, but hey, thank you nonetheless for hanging out and watching the video. If you enjoyed this one, make sure you show us some love by hitting that thumbs up so I know you loved the video. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.